Hello and welcome back to Freedom Forest. Today is a really exciting day. It is the middle of May and I'm about to have a big plant out in our Polytunnel. I've got lots more tomatoes to go in. I've got lots of chilies, mostly jalapenos. I've got a few cayenne peppers and then some yellow and red sweet peppers as well. And I've also got a whole tray of aubergines, so we are going to have a lot of aubergine this year. We'll find something to do with them though, I'm sure. So I've already planted out about 20 odd tomatoes just last week. They were the ones that were more ready to go, the bigger ones from my seed greenhouse at home. So I got those in last Sunday. And yeah, all of these guys have had a few more days. They're looking strong. We haven't got any cold nights forecast over the next 2 weeks looking ahead at the weather. So I decided it's time to get busy in here. So I'm going to lay out now where all of these are going to go, just plan out their positions, and then we'll get them in the ground. I've planted Golden Sun tomatoes down to here, and then from here I've got a Cherokee tomato. So I think I've got a few more Cherokees in that tray. So I'm going to keep continuing with those down here to keep them all together, I think, to start. So where to put the chilies next? So most of these are actually jalapenos, so I think I will put all of the jalapenos down one side if I've got enough spaces, and then we'll see what we're left with. So let's have a look. I've changed my mind about where to put a couple of things in here, because I have just remembered I've got quite a lot of other stuff to come from home yet that's still growing on to go in here, one of which is lots of different basil. So I'm actually going to take the sweet chilies out from this side, space out the jalapenos a bit more, and then save myself some planting holes so that I can dot some lovely basil in, because we all know that basil loves tomatoes. Okay, so yep, there's a few gaps for some basil to be planted out in the next week or so. On to the other side. Okay, so this side I do need to have a bit more of a think about. Dan had this planted up with his favourite stuff last year, so the spacing, the whole configuration is a bit different to what I've got on that side. And we've still got these guys doing well. If you don't know what these are Cape Gooseberries. And if they have the right climate, as you can see, they are actually perennial. In colder climates, they are an annual. But yeah, we left a few in. We didn't leave them all in when we had a tidy up in here to see if they come back. And as you can see, they have. And we had quite a few down here last year. And they gave us a brilliant crop towards the end of the season. I think about September, October, if I remember rightly, we had so many Cape Gooseberries and they were delicious, a real treat, and something that you don't see in the shops very often. So really, really nice when you find something like that you can grow pretty easily, and yeah, and that you can't buy very easily. And what's more is these plants seem to thrive on neglect, so kind of perfect for just being left in the polytunnel all over winter. They've done well. But yeah, I've got to have a think, because We have still got lots of stuff growing on at home, some of which might have to come in here. We have got another 2 new polytunnels this year, but we are really pushing it for getting all the work done to have them ready for planting. So I just need to have a think about what definitely needs to go in here. I've got cucumbers at home. I've actually still got another lot of tomatoes as well that are a bit smaller, but if they pick up in time, I'll get a few more tomatoes in here. I've got loofahs, which I'm going to try growing for the first time. They're going to be going in here. And there's still a whole tray of aubergines, a few cayenne pepper and a few sweet chilies, and probably, and some red noodle asparagus pea beans that we've not tried before, and they're recommended to grow in a warmer climate, so we're going to pop them into one of the polytunnels as well. And then we've got a whole load of melons, which hopefully we are planning on planting those in one of the polytunnels next door. But yeah, just in case, I've got to try and think about where I space things in case I do need to cram a lot more in here. So from the strings, we're going to have cucumbers, loofahs, more tomatoes, beans, can't forget the beans. Few sweet peppers left. They can go down here. I think that's it for now. Planting time. I'm going to get started planting the tomatoes now. And we just use these strings to support them. This is what we found is one of the easiest methods for supporting your tomatoes when you're growing them indoors like this. And so all we do with this, if you didn't see any of our videos last year, there's a knot in the end of this string, and as I bury the tomato into the ground, I'll put this string underneath it, and then as the tomato grows up, you just wrap the string around it, and it just gives it just enough support for it to reach up and not fall over. So the compost in here is really nice and loose because probably about 6 weeks ago now, I gave all of the polytunnel a really nice top up with fresh compost, another layer onto our no-dig beds. So if you saw any of our videos from last year, you'll know that this polytunnel was absolutely packed out with plants last year. So by layering a fresh load of compost on top, we're obviously replenishing the soil and giving the plants another great boost of nutrients for this growing season. And even though I grew tomatoes in this exact spot last year, I'm not worried about that because I know I've given probably a good foot of compost freshly layered on top, and it's just beautiful to plant into. And it is a little bit fiddly planting the tomatoes down into these holes, but because the compost is so loose, that does help. Because it is a good idea to plant your tomatoes as far up the neck as you can when you're putting them in the ground, because that will help to stabilize them, and they will actually grow new roots out of that upper stem, and that will help to stabilize them in the ground as well. If you'd like to see how we rebuild and refresh our no-dig beds like this, then check out our previous video on no-dig spring brassicas. We've got about 6 or 7 different varieties of tomatoes growing in here this year. We're still trying lots of different varieties to see which our favourites are and which grow best for us. And then hopefully at some time in the future, when we've got all 3 of our polytunnels up and running really well, and we've found our favourite varieties, we will separate the growing spacing for each. So ideally, we might hone it down to 3 varieties which we really like, which really do well for us. And then we'll grow each of the varieties in the 3 different polytunnels, because long term we do want to save more of our own seed. We do it for the things that we can at the moment, but obviously with cross-pollination and where we're not here all the time, it would be too hard to guarantee what we're getting at the moment. Now we do tend to grow heritage varieties wherever possible, and we do avoid F1 varieties purely because we believe that the heritage varieties have more nutritional value in them, and for us, and also because it's good to keep those older varieties going. So we'll continue to do that, but hopefully over time we will get much better at the process and we will save more of our own seeds. There's actually 2 ways you can string up your tomatoes from above. If you've only just discovered this method and perhaps you've already planted out your tomatoes but you'd like to use this, or if like me you just forgot to put the strings in the holes on your first few, don't worry, you can still do this. All you need is your strings in place from above, and then ideally a little bit of flexi metal, ideally covered in plastic like this one. Or you can just use a bit of soft material. I tend to use old socks or tights. So what you'd need to do is just attach your bendy metal or your material to the string, and then you can just very gently hoop the flexible metal just loosely around the neck of your tomato, and ideally you'd want to hook it just underneath where a set of leaves come out, because as the tomato grows that will help to hold it in place. And then all you do as your tomato grows bigger, you just gently wrap the string around the stem of the tomato as it grows up. Now I don't know about you guys, but this year I have really struggled getting my tomatoes going. I think mainly because of the erratic weather that we've had, and particularly these ones here, this variety, they were in the earliest batch that I sowed on the 9th of March, and they really had a hard time. There was a really hot day, I think late towards the end of March, one really hot day that just came all of a sudden, and I had these guys all tucked up in our polytunnel at home in a heated propagator with the lids on. So this particular variety, at the end of March, first they got a little bit scorched that day, and I did lose a few of my tomatoes. And then I managed to nurse them through the next few days after that. But then we had this real long run of all those cold nights, sun in the day, but really cold nighttime temperatures. And I had a whole tray of tomatoes, including these guys, which were completely stunted for probably about 6 weeks. I mean, I did, like I say, I did lose a few, but there was some of them which I honestly didn't think were going to bounce back, but these ones, literally in the last 2 to 3 weeks, just started growing slowly again, and now, yeah, they've sprung back into life, thankfully, because this particular variety was one of my favourites from last year, a really prolific cherry tomato variety. I do actually have another batch of these that I started late at home because I was so worried about my tomatoes, but they're only about this big. So we'll see if they catch up in time to be planted out. What is actually quite interesting with these tomatoes, which I know are my earlier ones, I'm noticing when I bring them out of the pots, although the growth rate is about the same as my later sown ones, these earlier tomatoes, which appeared to be doing nothing for so long, do have a much stronger root system and have grown into the pot a lot more. So perhaps whilst they weren't doing anything above, they were doing quite a lot of work below. So even though these holes are a little bit fiddly to work with, just having the no dig, the lovely loose compost just to pull back, it really makes it bearable, really makes it doable. No dig rocks. That's the tomatoes done. Onto the jalapenos now. So I'll just go ahead and plant this row up in exactly the same way, just without the strings, because the chili peppers don't need the supports like the tomatoes. We love jalapeno peppers, and pickling is a great way to preserve them. Last year we only had about 5 or 6 plants, but this year we've planted out 14, as I realised that we could use jars and jars of them on our favourite dinners like homemade pizzas, bean chili and nachos. I'm going to continue planting in exactly the same way now for the aubergines and the peppers, only this side should be a little bit easier because the holes that I'm working with are mostly bigger. So for any of you who might be new to our channel and haven't seen many of our other videos, you might be wondering why we have all this plastic weed membrane down in here, particularly when you'll hear us talking about things like no dig and no chemicals and all of that good stuff. And the reason is because this piece of land, this is where the polytunnels are, is about half an acre, and we acquired it almost 2 years ago, and it was completely overgrown, really covered in all sorts of weeds, mainly bracken, bramble, stinging nettles, bit of bindweed, all kinds of stuff going on in here. And so it makes this area very hard to manage currently. Because the bracken mainly is so persistent, what we have decided to do is put the plastic membrane down, hopefully just for 2 to 3 years, to weaken the weeds off, and then using a combination of no dig, so compost mulch layers, and then we also use wood chip layers in a lot of our other growing areas. We're hoping in another year or so's time that will be enough to suppress everything down once we've weakened it, and then we'll be able to take the plastic out, and we will reuse it in other areas as much as we can to get the most out of its life, but that is why we have the plastic membrane down here right now. One bonus though to having this black plastic down at the moment is it does help to lift the soil temperatures sooner, so I know that my plants in here will stay even warmer, particularly at this time of the season. That can be really helpful. Last few plants now going in, and that will be our planting complete for today. So that's the polytunnel planted with our first round of summer annuals. What I'm going to do now is give the plants a good watering, and I'm going to add a good dose of Epsom salts to the watering can. as this will give all these new plants a really good boost of magnesium, which will help with their growth at this stage and help them be nice and lush and green. We hope you've enjoyed this video today. If you have, please give us a thumbs up or leave us a comment below. You can also follow us on Facebook or on our website www.freedomforestlife.co.uk. We hope to see you again here soon. Thanks for watching. Peace and plants. Thank you, Amy, for reminding me about my beautiful New Zealand greenstone, which I put on especially for you. Peace and plants.